Bobby and Sherilyn Jameson lived in Eufaula, a quiet town on the shore of Lake Eufaula in southeastern Oklahoma. Bobby was 44. A bad car accident years earlier had left him with chronic back pain. He lived on a disability settlement. Sherilyn was 40. She suffered from bipolar disorder for years. They fought. They struggled. But they had their daughter Madison and made a plan to get out. In the fall of 2009, the Jamesons found a 40-acre plot of land near the town of Red Oak, about 30 miles from home. It was deep in the Samboy Range, remote and wooded, the kind of place where you could disappear from the world. They wanted a fresh start, to leave Eufaula and everything in it behind. On October 8th, they loaded up the truck and drove out to see the property. Madison rode in the back seat with her dog Macy. This was the last day anyone saw them alive. The truck was found a few days later by hunters who reported it to the Latimer County Sheriff. When deputies arrived, the first thing they noticed was the dog. Macy was dehydrated and weak, but alive. The second thing they noticed was the money, about $32,000 in cash sitting in plain sight. Nobody touched it. The family's belongings also told a strange story. Their IDs were still in the truck, so were their phones. Their coats were still in the truck, and October nights in the Samboy Range got cold. Wherever the Jamesons went after they parked, they went without identification, communication, money, or the right clothes for the weather. They took nothing. One detail the sheriff noticed from security camera footage: at one point, Sherilyn placed a brown briefcase in the truck. That briefcase was never recovered. Neither was the .22 caliber handgun that she stashed in it. The cash, all $32,000 of it, sat untouched when the truck was found. The Jamesons weren't wealthy. They weren't known for carrying cash. The disability settlement may explain where the cash came from, but it doesn't explain why they brought every dollar they had to look at a piece of land in the mountains. But the security cameras at their house recorded something that investigators have never been able to explain. The footage is time-stamped the morning they left. It shows Bobby and Sherilyn making trip after trip between the house and the truck, back and forth, loading boxes, carrying bags. They don't speak to each other. They don't look at each other. Between trips, they stop, stand completely still, and stare at nothing. Not at the ground, not at the sky, just somewhere in the middle distance. Then, after a few seconds, they start moving again. Same pace, same silence, like robots or zombies. The sheriff who reviewed the tape said they looked like they were in a trance, not arguing, not rushing, not behaving like a normal couple packing for a day trip. Just silent, mechanical repetition, like two people running on a program, like two people without free will. The Jamesons were already in trouble long before they disappeared, and every layer the investigators pulled back revealed something darker. Bobby was locked in a bitter legal battle with his own father, Bob Dean Jameson. In 2008, Bobby had filed a protective order claiming his father had tried to run him over with a car. Bobby's petition described his father as a very dangerous man. He accused him of being involved with meth and other criminal activity. He said his father threatened to kill him, his wife, and daughter. Then there were the spirits. Bobby and Sherilyn had both visited their pastor separately. They told him the same thing. Something was living inside their house. Spirits, entities they could see but couldn't make leave. Bobby told the pastor he'd gone out and bought a copy of the Satanic Bible. Not to worship anything, he said, but to find instructions for driving the spirits out of the house. He asked if he knew where to buy special bullets that could shoot the entities off the roof. The pastor didn't know what to say to that. Nobody did. A handyman who'd been staying with the family in the weeks before they disappeared had connections to white supremacist groups. After the Jamesons vanished, investigators took a hard look at him. They interviewed him multiple times. They couldn't tie him to the disappearance. On the property was a large metal storage container the family planned to move into while building on the new land. Sherilyn had spray-painted messages across its sides. One line said, "Witches don't like it when their cats are killed." The neighbors didn't know what to make of it, neither did the police. Inside the abandoned truck was an 11-page letter from Sherilyn to Bobby, handwritten and full of rage. She called him a hermit. She said she resented him. She said she didn't need him. Friends who read it later said it wasn't a goodbye note. It was angry and raw, the kind of thing you write at 3 a.m. when you've had enough. And then there was the last photo. It was on Bobby's phone, taken the day they vanished. The image shows 6-year-old Madison standing alone in the woods, not smiling, not crying, just standing perfectly still among the trees, looking directly into the camera with a blank, hollow expression, like she was waiting for something to happen. Nobody knows who took that picture. It was on Bobby's phone, but he wasn't in it. Neither was Sherilyn. Madison is alone. Trees behind her, dirt under her feet, and whoever was holding that phone was the last person to see that little girl alive. Search teams covered hundreds of acres. Dogs tracked scent trails that went nowhere. Helicopters flew grid patterns over the mountains. Volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder through dense brush, and still they found nothing. Then 4 years passed. In November 2013, 2 deer hunters were scouting a remote part of Latimer County, dense oak forest, rocky terrain, less than 3 miles from where the truck was abandoned in 2009. One of them stopped walking. Something pale on the ground caught his eye. Half hidden in the underbrush were bones, scattered across the forest floor by 4 years of storms and animals. 2 adults, 1 child. In July 2014, the Oklahoma Medical Examiner confirmed what everyone already knew, but no one wanted to hear. Bobby Jamison, Sherilyn Jamison, Madison Jamison. The official cause of death was undetermined. And that word undetermined is rare. Medical examiners almost always find something, a fracture, a puncture, toxicology, something. But the Jamisons gave them nothing. No bullet damage to any of the bones, no knife marks, no damage to the hyoid bone, which means they weren't strangled. 4 years of Oklahoma heat, cold, rain, and wildlife destroyed the evidence of whatever killed them. The case became national news. Hundreds of tips came in over the years, and none of them led anywhere. Every theory fell apart. Meth. Police searched the house and found nothing. No drugs, no paraphernalia, no evidence of dealing or using. Murder-suicide. But Sherilyn's gun was missing, and the bodies were 3 miles of rough terrain from the truck. Now, Bobby's father, he had an alibi and died 2 months after the family vanished. The handyman with white supremacist ties was a person of interest for a while, but nothing connected him to the disappearance. Sherilyn's mother believed that the family was pulled into a cult, and she never changed her story. The sheriff who worked the case said one thing stayed with him above everything else. Not the money, not the letter, not the photo of Madison in the woods. It was the footage. Bobby and Sherilyn moving through their house like they were sleepwalking, loading that truck in total silence, stopping to stare at nothing, then starting again, over and over and over. He said he watched it more than 100 times, and every time it looked less like a family packing for a trip and more like robots running a program. The $32,000 is still in an evidence locker. The briefcase has never been found. Sherilyn's gun has never been found. And nobody's ever explained what made Bobby and Sherilyn load that truck like zombies on the last morning of their lives. And most likely, nobody ever will.